everyone. Today it is, I believe, still October the 6th. It's our first October family forum. Thank you for joining me, Holly. College of Visual Arts no longer exists, but I like the ad that you're giving it. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
All along the Selby-Dale corridor in St. Paul. I had lots of friends there. In any case, my name is Sam O'Brien. I'm head of school at Great River School. Holly Bell is joining us also. My co-host, director of First Impressions. And, those of you who are here, we would love to hear any live questions. And good to know there's already some chat happening that people want to see some interactive drawings. We'll see what we can work in. I do have the live whiteboard, so we'll see. Hopefully that camera movement is not, nauseating to anyone who's watching. If you're just podcasting though, no worries. I could be spinning in circles for all you care. What I am gonna open with is just sharing some data, because I love data. I love representing data, just the whole thing. But specifically, what I brought up is the talking points document that we've been using regularly on this show, on this share. And Holly, can you see the whole document right now?
No, the right-hand side is cut off.
Okay, how about now? Can you see more of it? I
can see more of it, but there's still, there we go.
Oh, good. Everyone needs a helper. I need help. Thank you, Holly. So as we just review what's going on in the state of Minnesota and in schools, there's been a lot of news recently about case rates and increasing positivity. So we have actually added a data point to our metrics. And then next week, I should be ready to share some of the more complex and detailed metrics we use internally in order to decide what we're going to do for our school year. But for today, I'm just going to add one of the metrics, and that's the case positivity rate. So exciting that I have to say the first syllable a few times, the case positivity rate. And specifically, I just want to remind folks that what we do is we take the total number of cases in a county for 14 days, divide that by the county population over 10,000, so a factor of 10,000, and that gives us an average rate. And then one of the main data points we've been guided to use by the state of Minnesota is that the cases per 10,000 are a starting point for deciding what learning model we use. And specifically, when we started the school year, we were in a 20s case rate in most of the 7 counties that our students attend in. I want to point out this learning model, this is a guidance for a starting point where you could use the learning model. Generally, we're a little more conservative in terms of holding back on in-person learning than this learning model. And I'll talk about that again for a few minutes tonight, like I did last week. But here's the new data point. So for the 7-county metro area, this table here shows the percent of tests positive. And so specifically, percentages over 5% indicate generally that the community spread is considered uncontrolled by epidemiologists. And something that is new as of this past week, and so one of the reasons we started bringing this metric in is because we realized this metric also informs how we consider the data. And so this is data that is actually only 1 week old, so reported as of 10/1. And now using that reliable 10/1 date of last Thursday, what we do see is that in our most populous counties in the state, the case positivity rate did actually go up above 5% for the first time in, I believe, 6 weeks. Washington County is still below 5%, but very close. And so we want to keep an eye on that. And if we see this case positivity rate actually going up in a graph and not flattening out or lowering, that would be an indicator, especially for our educators and for our older students and for everyone actually living in our counties, that we got to be even more careful about how we go about being in the world. And then again, for our 7-county metro area, I just want to point out that again, these are 2-week delays on a 2-week average. And so we end up being a little bit behind, but the last 2-week period that we have data for reported by the Department of Health and then aggregated for schools is August 30th through September 12th. Now, if your life is anything like mine, And Holly, I'll ask you to weigh in a moment. September 12th might seem, frankly, like eons ago. There could have been different species alive then. They could have geologically, the terraform could have been completely different than it is now. And frankly, for all that has happened in my world since September 12th, I have a hard time hearkening back to how I felt in that time period of August to September. I believe the weather was generally warmer, though we're having a warm spell now. Where I live, the first snowflakes flew last week, and so feels to me like seasons have changed. But Holly, can you remember September 12th?
Not specifically.
Okay, that's telling. That's telling. So the last data we have is here, August 30th through September 12th, and again, we're looking at case rates to be declining, at which they are, which is good news for both the pandemic, its effect on our lives, and the kinds of things we consider at school. But we are in no way. I hear a lot of people saying "out of the woods," and we could talk about the phrase for a long time etymologically. But what I will say is that, in terms of wanting to be in the clear and see everything clearly around us, we're definitely not there because the case positivity rates are rising. And these mid-teen numbers are good. We'd like to see them decline and hold again for another 2 reporting periods. And then what we do internally is we look at that and we say, well, what could we do safely? And that's where I'm sharing internally with staff this week and next week some of the more detailed metrics that I've been looking at, and some of us have been looking at Great River School. And also, we just have to make sure, I suppose one thing that I did talk about last week, which is this service model that school is here and provides learning environment to your children is misleading if we think about it like a business. And specifically what I want to identify is that we're in the midst of a community challenge, and the pandemic that is challenging us to recall and remember that making sure our community learning environment is as supportive as it can be, especially for those folks who most need it. That's a really hard thing to keep in mind and remember when all of us are under duress, frankly. And so the shared ownership of what do we do with these numbers is one thing that I want to talk a little bit more about tonight. And specifically that now that we see these numbers declining, that's really good news. And as I have been saying for all of September and most of August, we want to see those numbers declining and holding steady in a reliable way. What we have experienced successfully on campus at the School Resource Center, where we do have students doing their distance learning in a learning community in a classroom, they're socially distanced, they're wearing masks. We have learned a lot from what is effective and what is challenging in that environment. And then we're also seeing a lot of, frankly, witnessing of staff concerns about how many different students were around in a given day or week, and how many of those students see each other. And so that community spread concept and how to really make sure we're prepared for it before we go more in person as a whole school community is something we have an eye on. But one thing that we have seen successfully put in place is that when people start to have symptoms and we send them home, we in fact have to then get a test. We have had to pause service of School Resource Center on-siteness for some families and some of the classrooms because those families have been exposed to someone who has tested COVID positive. And so we've put in all of those measures into place really successfully. I can't recall if I talked about that a lot last week, but it's good to see that the safety measures we prepared for are useful and that are applicable and we can execute on them. And so that's one good thing to see too. And also for, I suppose, the public in general to know that in our school community, we have about 60 to 65 students per grade. So you multiply that out by 12 grades. I didn't prepare for this on a napkin. So I believe that's about 780 students. So I just rounded up to 800. And like I did last week. And again, like you consider about our 120 employees, that's about 1,000 people. Now I'm doing some serious rounding up, right? And I'm doing that so you can think about that 1,000, 10,000 number. But again, if you think about the people in your lives that connect to those 800 students, it's 2 to 4 adults per student that they see regularly or at home taking care of them, or again, in part of their weekly routine. It can even expand beyond 4 adults in terms of grandparents, aunts and uncles, non-relative, but very close family member, friends, Those kind of people that are in the lives of students add up to several thousand people in our school community. And what I think about is the likelihood that our students are going to be exposed to active COVID positive people is very high in this pandemic. And again, as the pandemic moves through our population, we are balancing right now that not that many Minnesotans have tested positive. We don't have anything close to herd immunity. And that means a lot more people are going to test positive, especially as we enter more indoor time, as we enter cold and flu season. This pandemic really landed in our laps as we exited last year's cold and flu season. And last December 2019 was one of the most active regular flu seasons that we had ever seen as a state. Several schools in southern Minnesota, in fact, last December actually just closed like a snow day for a few days because they had so many students and staff stick with the flu, which is a different kind of virus. So now that this pandemic is moving still through our community, I know it's moving through at what feels like a geologic timescale. In that is very slow moving through our community and through our state and our region and our nation. But we can't take for granted the idea that, okay, we've just had enough of this at home learning time. It's time to go back. Because actually the data would show that per case rates climbing right now, we have the most active virus we've had since early July. And so we want to make sure we keep an eye on that. And as I report to you that we're taking actions when people have symptoms, those symptoms include common symptoms like coughing. Well, now I don't want to confuse official common symptoms with less common symptoms, but there are common and less common symptoms. So coughing, sneezing, general respiratory symptoms are alarming to most people right now. And so we've been sending students home and asking them to stay home if they have those symptoms and get tests. And then there are less common symptoms like fatigue, loss of taste or smell, other detailed ones. And so people are self-reporting to us they have those symptoms too. And so even at home, as you're noticing cold and flu season beginning, what I'm taking into account and we're taking into account at school is that we want to be very conscious and planful about if we start doing any more in-person learning, we want to really be prepared for the likelihood that will be interrupted regularly by testing symptomatic people going home and then classrooms having to wait and learning communities having to wait for test results to come back. And so that's a long sort of narrative, and I hope you've been, happily doing the dishes, or if you're at home listening, entertained. But what we'd like to see is that these case rates you see here in Carver County, we have a steep decline and is holding fairly steady. We'd like to see those steady numbers all very close to this line of 10 cases per 10,000, if not below. And when we see that, that's when we're going to really start to be able to seriously consider and plan of how we could be more in-person learning. There are no group of educators wanting more to be in person than the Montessori educators who have literally trained on how to get you to learn through your hands. And so believe me, we want to do this and we really want to be safe. So as I look at these, what I'm looking at is that each of these bar charts shows the cases per week in each of the 7 counties. And again, we want to see a pattern where all of them are dropped below the mid-teens, near 10, and ideally even below 10 and holding there for several bars. And so I hope to see that happen in this bar graph in the future. And then I just want to remind folks that we have a combination of keeping an eye on our viral activity, which is where a lot of my focus goes when I'm reporting back to you. But again, this school preparedness to implement mitigation strategies has to do with the space between people, also has to do then with how consistently we can wear face coverings and stop any droplets or contagions from getting into the air. And then also how we can implement air cleaning systems, which we have done, and we are underway. I have actually a phase 2 at school on site of implementing, looking at getting quotes from different places in the state of Minnesota that actually supply ionizing cleaning systems. And those ionizing cleaning systems have been shown by folks researching at the University of Minnesota to actually remove active bacteria and virus from the air. And so reducing the viral load in the air by having those machines in learning environments is something that I see is going to be useful, not just for this year, but if we're adult about this and we think about its impact likely on the next, say, 24 to 36 months. Now, I hope you didn't just drop the ice cream that you're eating or throw something out the window or, push your pet off your lap when I said 24 to 36 months, but we're all likely to be much more conscious about respiratory infection and contagion for the next several years. And so I don't know what that means in terms of mask wearing on school or on site, but I do know it means that having the cleanest air system we can for the next at least several years is super important. And so we are doing that on site at school. But those mitigation strategies, again, have to be compared with the viral activity. And just so you can all internalize this, I'm going to zoom in even more on the graph, because what we really want to understand is that these three learning models are much more complex than just 1, 2, 3. And in fact, we have all students doing distance learning right now, but we are, by welcoming students who need to be on campus to really succeed in their learning at our school resource center, we are still welcoming students on campus. And just to again report from the front lines internally, it is stressful to be an adult who's working on site and really thinking about how many students you're spending time with, how many of them might see other people outside, and how little control we have as individuals when we really are connecting our health to the behavior of the students that we see every day. And I'm speaking as someone who has actually only been on site several times this year, and there are staff who are on site every day really doing a wonderful job delivering a good educational environment in this context. And those staff are wearing masks, as are the students, and we're doing our best to implement all the mitigation strategies. But it's just stressful to be, as an adult working with students, really recognizing that if I'm with 15 students and they are each seeing 5 or 6 different people a day, I spend time indoors in a closed environment, breathing the same air as those students, and probably the 75 to 100 people they saw that day too, or that week too. And so it's just a higher level of exposure. And I know that's something that you can read and hear a lot about in education podcasts and interviews all over the country. But just to tell you about your very local frontline school scenario is that at Great River School, that school resource center is both giving us a place to see what a hybrid or in-person environment would be like, and to report back that it's regularly interrupted. It's pretty good in terms of students are getting some socialization. They are connecting with each other, but again, it's all socially distanced, and it really relies on us keeping the density of students low. And so we're really spreading students out. And as more students sign up, we actually are hiring more staff and really treating this year as the emergency it is, in terms of reducing the money we're putting into the school savings account to hire the appropriate number of staff. And they're wonderful new people, new additions to our school staff, but hiring them just to work at the school resource center. So that was a lot of details in our first 20 minutes. I moved pretty slow through our regular report, but one thing that I have found useful is, and I've said this a couple times, is all of the information that I've been seeing that still comes out of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Prevention at the University of Minnesota. So CIDRAP is a good acronym to Google if you want to look that up. But Dr. Osterholm is the leader of that Center for Infectious Disease Research and Prevention. And one thing that I thought was very useful is describing that in terms of controlling a real outbreak and pandemic requires 1 new case per 100,000 people per day. And so if you think about that over a 2-week period, that would be 14 per 100,000 people, or 1.4 per 10,000 people. So in terms of the metrics that we're using, we're still seeing infection rates way higher, in fact, 10 times or more higher than that 1.4. And so what I see the state of Minnesota has done is really set some metrics for numbers that are pretty aggressive in terms of going back to school and acknowledging that the community spread of this virus is going to continue to happen. And so I still want to emphasize that we are still in the midst of trying to slow the spread of this pandemic, even in our own community, and in particular among our own students and staff who could be seeing each other regularly. And so I haven't read this, I think in several weeks, but I will say one thing that has been guiding us and my thinking on this in particular is that Osterholm says right now trying to do contact tracing with these numbers is like trying to plant petunias in a Category 5 hurricane. And so I think what he's describing there is that if rate of spread is above 5% and case rates are high, it's very hard to contact trace. And I can say that is likely true because even in the situations we have paused school resource center service, when we pause that service and we start to try to contact trace who's been connected, when we're interviewing families and referring them to the Department of Health, it's many, many people that you've seen who might be getting tested and waiting for all the results really pauses the regular routine of our days. And so he continues that we're having trouble as a society finding a middle ground because there's so much politicization around safety measures. And so if we don't have a comprehensive testing strategy, good contact tracing, and all these other measures of controlling the virus, we have to take more extreme, crude, and blunt measures. Again, like not having in-person school. And so one thing that I am rallied about and really happy to see is specifically the amount of testing happening in the state of Minnesota. All the free tests that are available all over northern, western, southern, rural Minnesota, all over the Twin Cities. And so getting regular tests and getting a good picture of the community spread of this disease does allow us to do some really good data-based decision-making and then adult-level decision-making about working at school. And so there's the report. There's your evening, weekly news report from the head of school. I don't see any Q&As, but I am ready to draw anything. Holly,
Yes.
you have any questions you recall coming in by email these past couple weeks?
There's a few technology questions. I don't know if anyone here has issues with Schoology, but we do have a man named Troy who is a help desk for us.
Oh, yeah. Great. Indeed, that's true. And let's see, I turned my video off. I tried to rearrange the camera without making anyone nauseous. Okay, well, I have a little whiteboard. I can pull it up at any moment. Indeed, that's a good segue. We asked last week in a family survey for people to ask questions about Schoology if they had specific questions. I will just join in. I suppose I've heard a chorus of people reporting to me, sometimes hilariously, the frustrations of learning a new system. And so there are many things I could say about Schoology. One of them is that lots of schools use it. Another is that I don't see that lots of schools using it has made it easier to use intuitively. And so I apologize for that. Also, our struggle to learn how to use it is supported by someone named Troy, who is actually pretty close to several members of the school community. And his full-time job is making Schoology easier for other schools to use. He doesn't work for Schoology. He works for a local company called Sourcewell Technologies. They actually employ a few Great River School former employees. And so he gets along with our faculty fairly well and brings a lot of expertise to the table. He will be taking all of the family questions that have been asked, and then I'll meet with him on Thursday, and we're gonna record a little session that just answers the questions. And then we'll be sending that out. I hope it's all processed by Thursday evening, but even if it's not, we'll be posting it and sending out when it's ready, and then sharing those answers with families. But the second thing I'll say is that if you are having a Schoology challenge, we want you to send that question or that problem to help@greatriverschool.org. And we have several internal helpers who are responding to your questions too. And so I've seen that working pretty well in terms of the number of emails coming back saying, oh, thank you, you helped me figure it out. I will share that someone very close to me has a tagline for Schoology right now when they're waiting for the little pencil that moves around while you're waiting for something to load. And that person close to me said, Schoology, making people frustrated every day. And I thought that was, you know, a burgeoning career in advertising right before me, really. So at least I don't mean to make light of our troubles, but sometimes you gotta laugh or you're gonna cry. And so we'll try our best. Yeah. There are students who have transferred in at the older grades who have been using Schoology for several years at their old districts. One way that I saw our students really living out our school's mission was holding upper adolescent students held a leadership meeting today. And in the leadership meeting, they had a list of things we can do better as a school. And one of them was saying some of the Schoology pages are really helpful to us as high school students. Some of the Schoology pages aren't organized in that same way and we're confused. And so we'll make a helpful list of things that really help students. And I guess I thought to myself, this is, it shouldn't be as rare as it is to have a group of people who are experiencing problem come together and think, how can we help our teachers do a better job? And actually act on that. And so I saw all of them really putting to work the skills that they had practiced together, for the last 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years or more years as they've been members of this community. So 11th years and 12th years, hosting a meeting, calling me in, asking me sometimes to answer questions I can't answer. And also really, I think, doing a great job taking responsibility for taking action in their community to make things better. So that was fun to see. So Schoology questions, we'll answer them for families and really get a lot of those answers out to you all through that video with Troy. His name is Troy Cherry, and he's going to be helping us a lot these next few weeks especially. And I will note to families that there are Schoology open hours for all families. We'll link it again in the newsletter that's coming out, but I believe they happen every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of every week. And so those are posted for teachers on our internal calendar. The reason we don't post those on the external calendar is so that strangers can't show up and bring surprises to our Zoom meetings. So Troy's hosting those meetings. He's pretty good at keeping in and out who needs to be in and out. But if you're a family member or a parent who shows up and asks questions there, and you see a bunch of teachers, you're still welcome there. And Troy's gonna actually be putting teachers into a breakout room so that families can get their own breakout room too. So yeah, a lot of Schoology questions. I know this past week for me was a lot of communication with staff who are working on site about, how can we ensure that we're still going to be secure. And I think frankly over this next week, what I want to make sure I talk about before our time runs out tonight, is that we will be sending a survey. I believe it will go out tomorrow evening to all families, and folks like Holly and me will be calling folks who don't usually fill out surveys, because this is a survey we want 99% of our families to all respond to. It'll be very simple, and the survey will ask, given the current picture of today, October 7th, knowing what you know about the case rates, about knowing what you know about the percentage positive for tests, knowing what you know about the pandemic and testing in your life right now. If we were going to do an in-person school, would you send your child to school in person, or would you continue to do distance learning as a mitigating strategy? And we're not asking that because we're going to be in person next week. We're asking that because we're hitting, and I can bring it up in just a moment, we're hitting that, whoo, my drawing fell. The first time period, just trying to add a little drama to the show here, that first time period of assessment, and specifically assessing what learning model will do, requires that about every 6 to 8 weeks, we committed to looking at the learning model and making a communication with you all. So that first date is coming up the week of October 19th. And so if you had taken part in any of the working groups over the summer that looked at pedagogy, communications, health and safety, and student support, I'll be sending an email before the end of this week to reconvene those groups for a meeting, check in on the goals and what's going on and what you're noticing. That means there's an open call to join those groups if you'd like. And then the week of October 19th, a couple folks from those groups and then some folks who are on site and some folks in student leadership are going to join myself, Sam O'Brien, and our managing director, Wendy Fisher. We're going to look at the data and the experiences and again, reassess what school model we'll be using. And again, we're doing that to look ahead another 6 weeks. So we're not going to be changing school models the week of October 19th. I know that. And we are, though, assessing, especially for our youngest learners, is it safe to do more in-person learning than we're doing right now, and how? And so that could mean more a hybrid time, especially for lower elementary, could be closer to in-person or planning to go to in-person, but we really got to see those case rates go low, the infection rates and percentages lower from where they are right now. And then we got to work with our really brave, and I don't mean to say brave in a heroic sense, but it's brave to look at the world the way it is and act accordingly to our responsibilities, even if that doesn't mean individual comfort or satisfaction. And so that's brave to walk out into the world and engage that way. And I see our folks, especially who are working on site, are doing that every day. And frankly, the distance learning students who are logging in every day to the screen are doing that bravely, as are the teachers who didn't sign up to work on a screen and are still doing it. So as I screen share though, I'll just remind you of the little timeline that we had posted. And so I'm just gonna scroll because I know where it is. Right down here, just to remind you all that our approximate evaluation dates are coming up. And so as we look at that, again, we're gonna be looking at the week of October 19th to be re-announcing, what we're thinking and doing. And then I've committed to all of the teachers and all of the students and all of you as families that if we do announce a change in models, that it will be at least a 6-week period of implementation time and planning. And then one thing that we will be doing that I see some parents are starting to set up is more social networking, both virtually and in person. And so there's some exciting ideas. I'm maybe secretly pressing for a drive-in movie at the school, but there's some ideas that I see people developing before it gets too cold. Before that I think will also keep our community connected through both cold and flu season and the year. I see a question. Will you be talking about winter sports today? Winter sports day is actually going to be next week. So thank you. I think my original winter sports day was today. Holly.
What? I have some exciting news.
Oh, please tell us. Please tell us.
Our girls soccer team won conferences. So they're the conference champs. Woo! Yay.
Yay. Well, and I'd like to give a shout out to 2 Great River School girls soccer players. Have played a big part in the team this year and won accolades for both their soccer skills and their teammate leadership. Really helped them build that team. So, but that's really exciting. That's really exciting. And so Victor Rondisek will be joining me next week Tuesday, to talk about winter sports. The winter sports, really I don't know if you've been paying attention to any other news or if this is the only place you get your news, folks, but I'm gonna answer this question live. The whole sports world of high school sports in Minnesota underwent some drama this past 3 weeks, where the State High School League convened a meeting, charged schools a bunch of money, sent a bunch of bills because they weren't holding seasons. They needed more money to come in other ways. Secondly, however, they then decided to reverse the decision and institute an active football and volleyball season this fall, whereas they had postponed it till the spring. And so those seasons actually start, some of them started this week. So we have a couple volleyball players from Great River taking part in our Twin Cities Academy Great River Co-op. We have a football player from Great River School joining a 3-school co-op to play tackle football outside. And those seasons, are starting this week and I think will be over in like 5 weeks. So as an athlete, I'll just say, I hope everyone was training even though they didn't think a season was coming, because there's going to be a whole lot of sprained ankles like day 8 because ankles really support the whole scene. And if you're not strong, they take a lot of wear. In any case, I hope that's not true because everyone's in really good shape. And the winter sports scene is also a little bit in tumult. I had hoped winter sports would be all resolved by the time October 6th came along. But Victor will be here next week to talk about winter sports. I do think, seeing how the State High School League is acting, I do anticipate, this isn't information, this is speculation. I'm owning the speculation. And I'll just say that, it's still sort of a news source. I speculate that there will be an indoor basketball season, but it will be free of spectators. And it likely will involve some kind of rule about testing and mask wearing. And then in terms of other winter sports, I don't know necessarily what will happen with hockey, but I again suspect, just like football, there will be a season that reduces spectators and exposure and involves testing and a lot of rescheduling, frankly. And so I know that's great news, especially for our senior athletes who are looking forward to their final year of soccer or football or basketball or any of the sports, any of the athletics. And so we will be talking about that and other student activities next week on the 13th. Let's see. I haven't drawn much today, Dave. I know you wanted it. But I don't see any other questions, and I don't really have any more talking points. I really went as deep into the talking points as I feel like I could possibly have done. Holly, any other questions you think we should speak to?
Only one to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh. Okay, go for it. Put me on the
Okay.
spot.
How is your dogs, how are your dogs handling the new pasture?
Oh, well, so Holly, maybe this is where I will start drawing, Holly.
Okay,
Oh, but where did my marker go? I just
well,
put
it's on the floor.
Uh-oh. This is horrible TV, horrible. I don't know where the marker, oh, there it is, there it is. I put it in the spot where the markers go. My two dogs, one was tall, and fairly regal. I would describe him as regal, and kind of floppy ears. His name was Clancy. Is this a dog shape? I can barely see what I'm drawing.
Oh, it's so
And-
cute.
Yep, and one dog was
Isn't it?
very stout. I can't believe we're doing this with our time, Holly, but hopefully
Is that a
someone,
collie?
hopefully somebody, Clancy was a Labrador, I think collie, rumored collie, but mostly Labrador, maybe Greyhound mix.
With the long
Very
nose.
tall, built to run away fast
Ah,
and really be a hassle. So we got a small dog friend, and each of these dogs has actually, when I sold my house last March, remember last March?
I
Kind of a
do.
rough time to list a house and then try to sell it.
Yeah,
And
you
I may
did.
never go through that process again. I could say a lot about house sales, but this home we had loved and lived in, we put it up for sale. We thought, tough time to have dogs around. So actually just days before the pandemic shut everything down, we had found a place for Clancy to go with an in-law, my in-law, with a family relative.
Okay.
And then we found a place for Topsa to go with very close friends who have 3 kids. And so what happened actually is that they're still there. So Clancy is still in Como Park with a family member,
Yep.
really being the only companion to this family member who lives alone.
Really?
And and Topsa, who had grown up in a very stern household where there was no furniture lying for dogs, they had 1 rug indoors. They spent most of their day outside. I would say sees 3 to 4 movies a week, sleeps in beds with kids, warms toes, is
Probably
living.
has forgotten
So,
all
so
about
Topsa may be shaped a little bit more like this now,
yeah.
maybe, but is really loving life, and I think is the dog he was meant to be,
Oh.
so to speak.
So
In any
Dave
case.
Dave is asking if you can turn that into a Venn diagram.
Yeah, and for the dogs, yeah.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the dogs, Clancy's life is here. Topsa's life is here. They have no overlap. But
Oh,
as of March 12th, their overlap was literally the same circle, and so it's but in terms of a Venn diagram, maybe that explains people who needed dogs in their lives that I knew. If this circle was all the people I knew who need dogs,
yes.
and then this second circle was my dogs.
Yeah.
That's how it lines up now.
Beautiful.
My dogs now completely overlapped the circle of people I knew who needed dogs before, and so
Not very many people.
no. Thank you, Dave. Well, no, I just I guess that what that belies is my judgmental nature of some people who don't have dogs but say they really want them.
Yeah.
It's not fair to the dog to give them there. But my 2 dogs who formerly belonged to me, I would say now have new families and are doing their dog jobs.
You did a good job.
Yeah. And where I live right now, though, we will have working dogs probably sooner than later who will either chase coyotes away or keep animals safe or scare birds out of trees and stuff like
Bigger dogs?
that. I think the ones that'll keep animals safe will have to be bigger. Yeah. There are lots of beings here where I live that are not human but are predatory.
Oh, yes, indeed.
And I won't speak about them because I didn't talk to them about talking about them on this call, but I will just say I'm in the land of wolves and coyotes.
You got to be careful what you say
Gotta be
about
careful. Yep, gotta be careful. And gotta be careful what kind of dogs I bring in. But actually, I can hear one of my neighbors raises sled dogs, and I can hear those sled dogs around feeding time, which is now close to sunset every day, howling. Howling.
Oh,
I know. I know.
goodness.
So we've veered on a course of just storytelling, which
I can do that too.
yeah, which I suppose I'll say, folks, is not completely without a plan. Storytelling is one of the antidotes to the experience of isolation in this pandemic, and so it is one of the things too that we try to focus on. I know there was a lot of feedback I'll share from families the first couple weeks of school about what is going on. When do we start school? Like, give my kid a worksheet or something to do. And a lot of what we're trying to do is just tell stories. And I know, sometimes it succeeded. Sometimes it was farther from success than we wanted. But sharing stories of our lives is going to be one of the ways we hold steady through this thing. Holly, how are your dogs? You have a foster dog, right?
I have two dogs right now, but one of them, the foster dog, on Saturday is going to be reunited with her baby.
Oh, that's
3
nice.
houses down. I'm so
Okay.
excited. We have a little party planned,
Oh, great. Oh, that's great.
complete with
Wonderful.
masks and distancing. My other dog
Wonderful.
just went outside. She was starting to cry.
Yeah.
She does, to
Yeah.
go outside. And so my sister came up and got her, and we share a duplex, which is very, very fortunate for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Close to family. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I don't want to put you or your sister on the spot, but maybe she can make an appearance at a future event.
Oh, she probably could.
Yeah.
This evening she has guests in the backyard. Well, it's still not.
Oh, cool. Oh, nice. Well, yeah, we're gonna have some warm spurts even these next 6 weeks, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, we have a chimenea.
Oh, cool. Wonderful. Nice.
You know, city life.
Yeah. I love too that I'm getting some chats from folks attending tonight who are telling us about giving me some updates on my old neighborhood.
Right.
Love to see.
I like that.
One thing that I will say, just as we close here, is that if you're here and you've got a question, please continue to ask it, even though we seem to be wrapping up. And what I will say is that the celebrations that we often have at school are one of the things that I'm hearing that students are missing the most. So including key experiences and trips. And so one thing that you can do at home is talk to your student about how to recognize, say, certain events or important dates or times. And so some of that time happens during key experiences, and the celebrations are, just making a successful meal for 50 or 100 peers as you sit there in the cold with them in September. So that has passed. You could still ask your student, if they're an adolescent or even if they're a younger student, to try to cook a meal outside for your family and get sort of the same feeling of challenge and success. But one date that is coming up that we often do recognize at school is Indigenous Peoples Day, which happens on Monday, October 12th. Every year, the second Monday in October is recognized, in fact, by many states and municipalities in the United States and all over the world as Indigenous Peoples Day. And it's a way to recognize longstanding Indigenous cultures and traditions that are often the bedrock of current society's successes. And so you can look many places for those resources, but it may be one thing that's coming up in the next week in your student's classroom. And then specific to North America and the United States, the month of November is American Indian People's History or American Indian Heritage Month. And so there will be also some things that we maybe recognize and go out of our way as a community to learn about in that month also. And then if you're just tuning in, I did talk a little bit earlier about some of the data points we're looking at, and mentioned again that we'll be sending a survey this week, likely tomorrow night. Tomorrow is October 7th, likely the evening of October 7th. And it's just gonna be a very simple, I think it's 3 questions right now, maybe 4, where we're asking you to give a snapshot account for us on, as a family, would you be sending your student to an in-person school at Great River if we offered that option? And it's one way we're getting a metric on family needs and if those needs have changed since the last comprehensive survey we took in August. And so we really want everyone to fill that out. We'll be pressing for that and mentioning it several times. And we want you to fill it out before the end of the day on Saturday. So we're gonna send some reminders and we'll send some probably auto calls, and we'll be calling up families who don't fill it out because we really want to get a really comprehensive shot of a picture of what is happening for our community right now. And I'm doing the same thing for faculty and employees of the school. And again, we're not doing it because we're thinking we're just going to change models right now. We're doing it so we can really get an updated listening on where people are at and what they're thinking. So, all right, folks. Well, Holly, anything else we should talk about?
Let's talk about what you're going to do tomorrow.
Oh, well, I'm going to consider actually ordering from the new Heron to Go menu because
Ooh.
I know there are some really wonderful new things on the menu. I will just say right now, buttermilk roast chicken, Barbere stew, vegan. I think that is from somewhere near Morocco, but I would love more. Maybe we'll have a Heron to Go expert on the show next week also.
That would be nice.
To talk about student events and feeding events. Tuna casserole, which is gluten-free available. The Barbere is vegan stew. And then if you order by next Wednesday at noon, the kitchen desires to serve you. Oh, it's Barbere is an Ethiopian stew.
Ah, Ethiopian.
Cultural tradition. So wonderful. So I mean, really and truly though, the buttermilk roast chicken, the tuna casserole, I've not had the Barbere. I think that's a new recipe, but the tuna casserole and the buttermilk roast chicken. Oh man, I'm just getting hungry thinking about it.
Yeah.
So please order Heron to Go, and all of the wonderful folks working in the kitchen really, or frankly, just do the best job making delicious food. I've never had a finer meal that was heated up from frozen. It was so good.
It is good.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Holly. Thanks for being here with me. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to the dozen or more folks who tuned in tonight. And if you do have any questions that you didn't get to ask, you can always send them to office@greatriverschool.org. And then I'll even answer them right away on the next week's call. Next week, we will be talking about student events, possibly Heron to Go. And then the following week, I just want to get the dates correct. On the 20th, I'll likely be talking about school models specifically and some of the work and process that week that we'll be doing to make decisions about in-person, hybrid, distance learning, and specifically how we keep really making sure we're meeting the needs of our students during a time that will not happen again. And your children will tell their grandchildren about what this was like. And so let's make sure to savor the parts of it that we can. Okay. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks for doing this, Sam.
Thanks for doing this, Holly. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.